any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Author C. Clarke. Now I know this quote's a little bit overused, but I think it's really appropriate. I mean, I think it's been a really incredible year for augmented reality, and you guys are in it, you guys know it, and you guys know how exciting it is right now to be in this space. And I consider myself super lucky to be in this space as well. And I think it's also, you know, when you show somebody augmented reality for the first time, it is a little bit like magic. It's a pretty magical moment. So I'm going to be talking about a lot of stuff today, and I'm really excited to share some stuff with you. But just quickly here, how many developers are in the room? Great. How many of you guys used Vuforia before? Cool, awesome, great. So if you guys use Unity, Vuforia now is integrated into Unity. There's also the native SDKs are also still available, but we're really excited about the fact that we're integrated into Unity. And the idea here is that if you're a Unity developer today, or if you're going to create your content in Unity, you continue creating your content inside of Unity, and then you use Vuforia to bring it into the real world. And you can either bring it and attach your content to objects or to environments. Now, Vuforia helps developers put their content into the real world by using advanced computer vision. And it's this advanced computer vision that's kind of indistinguishable from magic. It allows us to have a really deep understanding of the world. And what I mean by that is that we can understand our environment and we can understand objects. And when you use Vuforia in your application or your game or experience, you're kind of giving your app or your game experience an eye into the world, a way to see the world. And when we think about putting our content, our virtual content, onto objects, we're looking at about two different types of situations. We're looking at putting content onto objects. It's like posters, board games, brochures, etc., all these kind of things, very typical Vuforia applications. And the other part of it is that we're looking at putting content into new environments. We want to put it on the floor. We want to put it on a table. We want to make it float in a room, right? Those are the kind of experiences, and that's what most of us have been seeing with a lot of AR kit applications. I'll be talking about both of these, but I'm first going to go into talking about putting your content onto objects, and then later I'll be talking about putting your content onto the environment. Now, when talking about putting your content onto objects or dealing with objects in general, I think it's really important to talk about interactivity. And I don't know if any of you have done any kind of VR development, but in VR, there's a lot of challenges for you to sell this idea of interactivity to the user. And in augmented reality, we have a different set of problems to deal with interactivity, but they're still there. But the important thing I want to get across, though, is that if we want to meet people's expectations of affordances, we really need to be able to interact with objects in a way that we expect to, right? If you see a mug, it's got a handle, you want to grab it by the handle, and you want it to work like a mug in the real world. And Vuforia gives developers a lot of different ways of interacting with objects and augmenting objects. And one of the really interesting ways is with something called a Viewmark. And a Viewmark not only allows you to augment an object, but it allows you to uniquely identify that object down to serial number. It's kind of like a barcode or a QR code for augmented reality. These are also really good if you want to do like unlockables for toys or board games, to unlock any kind of digital content or whatnot. Image targets are our most popular targets. They allow us, like I mentioned before, to augment posters and books and cards, playing cards, and all sorts of things. And they're incredibly popular. If you're looking for a third dimension, we have multi-targets, cuboid targets. So anything that's box-shaped, packaging, anything that has a lot of different sides you want to work with, our cuboids allow us for that. Cylinder targets are a lot of fun. They allow us to properly augment things like bottles and mugs and anything that's cylindrical, obviously. And that quick example I showed earlier uses a cylinder target. And if you have something that's small, hard, rigid object targets are really useful for that. And all of this is available today in Vuforia 6.5, which is integrated into Unity. Now, what all of these objects have in common is that they all have intricate visual detail. And it's this intricate visual detail that allows the computer vision magic to do it, to know where it is in the environment and to allow us to properly augment it. But what about objects that don't have intricate visual detail? Cars. If anybody's ever tried to do anything with cars in AR, you know it's super challenging. Appliances are tricky, right? 3D printed objects, industrial equipment, engines. These are all things where it's hard to augment, and there's rarely ever a spot for us to stick anything in there. And what we've done is with Vuforia 7, we're including something called model targets, and that allows us to augment objects not necessarily based on intricate visual detail, but it allows us to augment objects based on its geometry, its shape. So the deal here is that you can take a 3D mesh model or solid model and import it into Vuforia. And now, once we have the information about its geometry and its shape, we can detect the object in the environment. So the color doesn't matter as much. It can have wear and tear. It can be a little grimy. We'll still be able to augment that object. And this is really exciting for us because we feel with model targets, it allows us to augment a whole new class of objects that we haven't been able to augment well before. And objects that don't have these, that are not made to pop with detail, and objects that were not necessarily made with augmented reality in mind. Now, in addition to all this object stuff, one of the things that we're doing is that we've created this set of playing cards that are available to any of you guys. And the deal here is that if you guys download Unity, you can grab our samples from the asset store, which is all free. And these cards will work with those samples. And what that means is that if you guys are excited about AR, as I am, you can go home or you can go back to your hotel, take these cards, use these samples, and you can start working with Vuforia right away. Now I'm going to show some quick demos here using these cards and some of the things that you could potentially do with the samples. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this over. All right. All right, so that should have been switched over. Let's see if my iPhone shows up there. I'll try that one more time. No? Okay, so I got some videos for you guys. So practice, but then this stuff happens. All right, so let's get this working here. All right, cool. Okay, so this is a quick example of the astronaut card. So you guys can see these packs up here, and all of these have augmentations on them by default. You can get like I said, we can get these samples, and this is sort of a simple image target where we're just putting some content on top of a card. This is an example of our cylinder target. So we have this object here that is circulating around this rocket booster. And what I particularly like about this example here is that it's really commonplace for us to put content immediately on top of our objects. What I like about this is that it feels like this drone is interacting with a real-world object, right? So you can have your virtual content interact with real-world objects. Here's an example of our multi-target, which is just showing sort of like the scoreboard of a game on top of this box. And I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Merge. I feel like Merge does a really good job at showing off multi-targets. You can see this cube here, and then you start putting your virtual content on it. And this is an example of an educational game that they've made. And then this is a simple example of our object target. So you can see Vuforia has a lot of options for developers on putting content onto objects. All right, so assuming that wasn't the last of our technical difficulties, I'm going to go through a quick Unity demo. All right, so how many of you guys have used Unity before? All right, cool, awesome. So this should be pretty familiar to you guys. So I have Unity up here, and I have a blank scene. I have loaded up some assets just to sort of make it a little bit easier so you guys are not sitting through importing of assets. But so this is Unity 2017.2, which is the one that includes Vuforia. And the first thing that you would do when trying to start creating your content, your augmented reality content, is you want to go into the player settings. Let me zoom in over here. And you can see right there is what the box you want to check, right? That enables Vuforia Augmented Reality. Then what you want to do is you want to go into your game object and Vuforia menu. And over here, I'm just going to pause really quick. So here we have our AR camera, and I'll talk a little bit about that. We also have the image, the multi-target, all of the objects that I discussed earlier, all the power that Vuforia can give you is all here. All you got to do is plop one of these down. So the cylinder, the multi-target, your image target, they're all here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put in an AR camera, and I'm going to remove the main camera. So the AR camera is going to serve in your scene, it's going to serve not only as your main camera in Unity, it's also going to serve as your device's camera. And then once I have that in place, I'm going to go ahead and go back into the menu and put an image target. So I'm going to zoom in here. So you can see the astronaut card that we showed earlier. And so it's just loading this by default. And you can also, if you go into the menu here, you guys can see right there. So you can switch out the different targets that are built into the demos, into the samples. I'm going to leave the astronaut card for now, and then next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into pull in my asset here. If any of you guys have ever worked with Unity, you know that it never crashes. All right, so I'll talk through that. Okay, so what you do is you make your content a child of the image target game object, and then once you do that, you can hit play in Unity, and then once you hit play, you can oh, there it goes. Decided to work. All right, so there we go. So we see the astronaut. The astronaut is on top of the astronaut card. And then if let's see if this works here. All right, so here we go. We have, so right now I'm holding in my hand just a regular webcam, and this is because it makes it easier to demo. And you can see here we have the astronaut card, and our content we just placed in there is on top of our astronaut card. It's really that easy. Vuforia is trying to make it so that way, once you get your target set up, you get it into Unity, you put your content into it, and then it's almost done. All you got to do now is add your business logic, or whatever sort of game logic you want to put in there, or whatnot. That's up to you guys. We want to take that. We want to make it so that way you guys can start working on your content sooner, faster. All right. So this is a quick video of the same thing. I'll skip that. Okay, so now if you're anything like me, you've been really looking for an excuse to get a 3D printer. And I know the model targets, when I heard that this was coming out, I'm like, this is my excuse to get a 3D printer. And then we were thinking about what kind of content could we create that would work well with our Mars theme that we're working with, and we decided to print the Mars Viking lander, and that's what we did, and that's what I have up here on stage. And we also have one of these at the booth. And then we were thinking about, okay, well, now that we have this Viking lander, we're having a conversation with our president, Jay, and it's like, well, what should we do with it? And he came up with this idea of like, well, why don't we just set it on fire? And I'm like, that sounds like it might be fun. And that's what we did. So I'm going to do a quick demo. So here, Model Targets is going to be part of Vuforia 7. And I'm just going to give you guys a quick little sneak peek here. So I already have a Unity scene loaded already. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. All right, here we go. Okay, so I have a flamethrower on the side here, and the first thing that you're going to notice is that the flame's coming out. I'm burning all of you. And then as I bring it over here onto the object, you can see that the flames stop. And now we have this, and you can't quite tell, but there's also a little bit of smoke coming out. But you can see here that we're augmenting this object. Every sort of like nook and cranny is really, like everything's just so sticky, everything's just right on there. And you can see these demos. Also, we have several demos of model targets on our booth, including a 3D printed heart. We have a couple of Viking samples, as well as some other samples for a motorcycle. All right, so now that we've talked about objects, we're going to talk about environments. We're going to talk about putting your content into environments. Now, back in 2013, Vuforia came up with this technology called Smart Terrain. And part of that, we used depth sensing technology to get all this information from the environment, all of this sort of rich detail, all of this really great geometry. And with all that data, we could do really interesting things, right? We could detect all sorts of things. We could have all sorts of interactivity. But that's only feasible with world-facing depth sensing cameras. And that's only available right now with HoloLens and with Tango. So what we really want, right, as AR developers, we really want this kind of stuff to work everywhere, right? That's really what we want. That's where we want to get to. But we can't get that kind of rich level of detail with just regular phones, right? The phones are in most of our pockets today. But what we can do is we can do a pretty good job at finding planes. And that's what Vuforia 7 enables. And there's been a huge demand for this kind of technology, this sort of markerless technology. And ARKit and ARCore obviously does this really well. And Vuforia 7 introduces something called ground plane. And one of the reasons why we haven't done this before is because it's really tricky. It's really hard for you to get this working really well cross-platform. You know, Apple and Google have a lot of control over the hardware that they've been producing that support this kind of thing. So this tech is really dependent on either knowing the hardware or a pretty involved calibration procedure. So we need precise timing between like a specific camera frame to a specific piece of data that the IMU is giving. And that's what makes this sort of all that magic happen. And not to mention, you also have computational requirements, right? You need a certain amount of CPU to be able to process all that and be able to execute on it well. So one of the things that Vuforia has introduced is something called Vuforia Fusion. So the idea here is that we really want developers to be able to create content and for it to work everywhere. We want it to work everywhere. And we want it to feel and work and the user experience to be great and pleasant and awesome for our end users. And now there's a ton of fragmentation in the market. So there's not only do we have ARKit and ARCore, but all of these devices have different cameras. They all have different CPUs. They have different sensors. Some of them don't even have sensors, right? And the idea is that Vuforia really wants to take care of this for you, right? We want you to not have to worry about what device you're ultimately going to deploy to. You create your experience, and then Vuforia is going to take care of figuring out, hey, does this have Tango? Hey, does this have ARKit? Does this have AR Core? And we'll sort of do that hard work for you. So what this really means in practicality is that you create an app with Vuforia, you deploy it, and if somebody's running on let's say, the brand new iPhone X, we'll use ARKit. That's going to give the best experience for the end user. If they're using an older iPhone 6, we'll use our own ground plane, and it will have a very similar experience. Similar thing, if they're on a brand new Pixel 2, we're going to use AR Core because it's there. And then if they're using a Samsung Galaxy S7, then we'll use our own ground plane. Running a little short on time, so I'll go through some of these a little bit quick here. But just to kind of go a little bit deeper into fragmentation, right? So right now, this is sort of the map of what the current Vuforia applications look like, where they're deployed. And 65 models of iOS, and I'll tell you, honestly, I didn't even realize there's 40,000 models of Android devices. It's like, I can't even imagine that. So ARKit today is about 36% of those. With ground plane, Vuforia ground plane, we're looking at 94. So you'll be able to reach a much wider audience there. And with Android, things are obviously a little bit trickier. Today, it's about less than 1% as far as devices, right? So we have 2 Pixel phones and then Galaxy S8. And with ground plane, we're aiming for 20 to 30% device coverage by release. Okay, so you guys are awesome. You guys are augmented reality developers, and we want you guys to continue creating awesome experiences. If you guys want, I highly encourage you guys to check out Unity 2017.2 with Vuforia 6.5. Vuforia 7 is coming soon, and that includes model targets as well as all of our ground plane stuff. And if you're really itching to get access to model targets sooner, check out our developer portal to get early access. And if you guys are Unity developers, check out some of our really cool samples on the Unity Asset Store. And I have packs here of cards if you guys are interested.
Okay, Vinny, then thanks again for an awesome talk. It was nice to see what's brewing at Vuforia.
Thanks so much.